Welcome back to the Life&Times Podcast. I'm your host, Loyd Phillips. Listen, this is the 100th episode of the podcast. So, I was thinking, who should I put on here? And Leighton suggested, well, you should probably get your dad. And to be honest, he was probably correct. I got most of my social skills from him. I thought it would be good. But the fact that my dad was on here, recently my friend, his dad passed away, who was also one of my best buddies also of my life. And, I just like to dedicate this, not only to my dad who was on the show, but, to my friend's dad also. Love you, Kevin. Let's start the show. Welcome back to the Life&Times Podcast. I'm your host, Loyd Phillips. Today is a special, day. It's the most special day, as a matter of fact, because this is actually, I've said it numerous times. The calculations were off. We figured it up. Let's get excited. Today is episode number 100. We're all excited about it. I know I am. And so today I have here with me my dad for episode 100. 100. I just felt like Leighton pushed it, and then I thought, who better to have on episode 100 than my own dad, who part of the reason I learned to communicate so well, I don't even know if part is the answer. 85% of the reason I communicate as well as I do, I think it came from my dad. So here he is today, Loyd Phillips Sr. Everybody, how are you doing?
Fine, great.
Yeah, he's doing super good today. Well, I just was thinking, like, when I grew up, the only reason that, I don't know, I didn't grow up with you, but I always heard when you were a kid that you got in trouble a lot and you talked a lot at school. And I'm not sure how that rubs off because I didn't directly watch you do it, but somehow I guess it's just in the blood, maybe.
Probably from your mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom, for those of you, and you don't know, nobody knows, so I'm going to tell you. My mom, she'll have a conversation with you. Like, she'll talk to you if you speak to her. She's not even rude. She's not rude at all. She was a teacher. Like, she was a school teacher. It's not like she's silent, but she'll talk to you. No. She'll talk to you if you talk to her first. I guess that's what it is. And other than that, she just sits over there like she's stoic. I mean, I don't know. Probably because she's Indian. Maybe she just doesn't talk.
Well, she talks to me a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's just get right to it. How old are you?
66, be 67 next month.
I honestly feel like I missed the boat by not having the Phillips 66 party.
I don't know why you didn't.
I just feel like I'm kind of missed the boat on that deal, but you're going to be 67. Do you feel 67?
Yes.
I don't know what that means. I'm 42 and I still feel like a kid. So there's various reasons for that, but like even just mentally, I feel like a kid.
Well, mentally, I feel like a kid.
I don't know if I have adult thoughts or I don't know. I don't know at what point you grow up, and maybe nothing's happened to me like it should have in order for me to grow up mentally. Maybe that's it. So it's 67, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so what? Well, that was 1955. You were born.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a fine year. It's a good year. So were you an only child?
I should have been. From in my town, most people didn't know I had a brother and two sisters. They just thought it was me.
What do you mean?
Well, nobody knew Darlene and Mary or Doyle. They just knew me.
Well, people your age, of course, people your age knew. But okay, of course, people knew them who were their age. But you just mean like the townspeople. But what did they think? What do you think they thought? Like they had friends. Do you think people were like, "Oh, that's your brother"?
Yeah. It was later after I graduated high school, and different people would make the comment to either Darlene, Mary, or Doyle. I didn't know Loyd was your brother.
So I don't know how old the kids are. I mean, we had I spoke to Pop all that time, but on the podcast, what's the age group? Are you the youngest by a year or what?
Mary's about 20 months older than me, and Doyle's 4 years older. Darlene's 5 years older.
Well, so what do you mean? What did you do when you were?
I mean,
a kid?
all of them are, like Mary's going to be 70 in December, and the other two are closer to 80. No, closer to 70, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so all right, that sounds pretty. So when you were a kid, like what was it like? What do you mean? You grew up? You were all basically the same age. There weren't that much age difference between you guys. Like you got in trouble a lot. What do you?
Well, we learned a lot of pool hall things for grade school that we could share with everybody.
And so that's what led to some of the troubles, you think?
Yeah, I think it led to a lot of the troubles because the guys that we run around with were quite a bit older.
So when you were, I don't know how this goes. I never really thought about it. When you were a kid, did they have kindergarten when you were a kid?
No.
Did they really not?
No.
I don't know why it would. I can't even speak. I don't know what would make me think to ask that. It just seems like it was something that didn't exist back in the day.
No.
You just first grade, right? You started first grade.
We started first grade.
Yeah. Okay. So do you remember your first grade teacher? Do you remember all that?
Oh yes, she's wonderful.
Who was it?
Cecilia Speaks.
Oh yeah. Here's what I do know. I remember this, and then I'll let you comment. When I got to third grade, that's when we moved to the building where she was at, which probably was the building where you were at. And I remember the very first day I walked up the stairs, and Miss Littlefield, we called her then. I think that was her name.
Juanita.
She said, "Oh Lord, we got another Loyd." And then the Speaks lady at the end of the hallway, she's like, "Oh goodness." It was something like that. I mean, they were tag teaming me.
Oh.
And it was based on you. But like at the time, I don't think I was a troublemaker when I was a kid. I don't know. I don't know. You'd have to tell me. I don't think I was a troublemaker like when I was in kindergarten or I don't. So for them to start bashing me like I was.
We pretty well guarded you to the outside world. We kept you on our block.
Yeah. With Billy and Jerry.
Yeah, with Billy and Jerry.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it was later. People were running around town. It took a while for, I don't know if it was you or mom, but it took probably mom. It took a while for her to let me ever get out. So
yeah, and it wasn't like me because my mom let me get out. She just didn't want me going to the pool hall every day.
Well, which is a funny thing because I don't remember what age. I'm going to go probably 6, 7 to 8. You took me to the pool hall.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the same place?
No. The pool hall that I went to was located right on Main Street, about straight across the road from Kern Insurance.
Okay. That was the pool hall.
Uh-huh.
So were there a lot of people? I mean, I don't know. Luxor was different. There was a bar there when I was a kid. That stuff doesn't exist anymore. Was there a bar next to the pool hall?
No.
Or did they drink beers at the pool hall?
Next to the pool hall was the grocery store on one side, and on the other side was the post office.
So it just sounds like it was like a calm town. Where was the bar? I'm not saying that that's where you were in, but where was the bar at?
The bar was around the corner.
As where I know it was at?
By where Fishing Hawk Cat is.
Yeah.
Karate class. Yeah.
That's where, okay. So Phillips Lounge.
Yeah, Phillips Lounge. Back then it was Billy Armstrong.
But Phillips Lounge, not us, right?
No relation.
Huh.
His first name was Philip.
Side note, biggest tip I ever got when I was a waiter. I was a waiter at the Olive Garden at one point in my life. Biggest tip I ever got was from the bar owner of Phillips Lounge. And I'll just because I said it, it's because I've told the story before, but if you haven't heard it, I used to, I'm summarizing just because I want to get back to you, but we would drive by the bar and it had a swinging door. And so we would drive by there every day after school and we would kick in the bar door. So if somebody was walking out or about to walk out, maybe it hit somebody. I know it probably hit somebody at some point because sometimes people chase us down the cement yelling at us down the sidewalk. Sorry for the interruption, everybody. I was just sorry for interrupting the show. I was just going to tell you, hey, I need you to know that people say, where'd you get that lavish beard? And I say, well, the lavish beard I grew because I'm a lavish beard grower. But The reason it's so silky smooth is because I use Winchester Ranch Beard Co. products. Top oils on the market. I've been using them for years, or last year because it just started, but that's why my face looks so good. Tell your friends and use that. Okay. Talk to you later. Forgot one. American Survival Co. Everybody. American Survival Co. They're the top survival school in the entire world. I know everything for my survival needs, that's why I use American Survival Co. Go check out their website at americansurvivalco.com. Get all the details and information about team building exercises and all the things that you can do. It's really an awesome place. And the two guys who own the place, they also are the host of the new Netflix show, Snowflake Mountain. And that's awesome. Go check them out. Now back to the show. Love you. So, biggest tip I ever got was from the owner of Phillips Lounge. So,
Was that Dale?
I have no idea. I don't remember his name. So, how old were you when you went there?
When I went to Phillips Lounge?
I've heard these stories. There's the thing. Like, I've heard these stories my whole life where people say, oh, I got stories about your dad. And then you tell me that you hung out with these older people. How old were you when you first started going to the pool hall?
I don't know, 5, 6,
5,
somewhere in there like that.
8 or 6 by yourself.
No, well, yeah, pretty much. I would go down there to, Mom would be working in the clothing store, and I would go in there, ride my bicycle, park, look in, walk in there, drink a pop, because my neighbor, like I said, owned it. So, and I'd visit with Todd, and he'd let me shoot pool free, and then his grandson David and I. Basically, David always likes to tell the story that we were crib mates together. We actually slept in the same crib at one time, or occasion or two.
But did you learn to play pool?
Yes.
Like as a kid?
Yes.
So you were good at pool as a kid?
Yes, very good.
Like, do you like pool to this day?
I don't even know where a pool table is unless you go to Magoo's. And since I wore glasses, I get upset because I don't shoot like I used to shoot. Myself, David Bates, and Randy Monk were probably the best young pool shooters in town.
Wait, because you wore glasses?
It makes a difference, wearing glasses and not wearing glasses, and one eye's near side, one eye's far side. I don't know what I blame it on my glasses, but it's just the fact that I don't play pool 365 days a week, or 365 days a year. Back then I did. And I played dominoes. I played gin, Hollywood gin, knock. If they gambled, I was in on.
Those sound like cigarette smoking games.
Well, you could, if you could bum one off of a guy coming back from getting ready to go. Some of the guys were going to Vietnam. Some had already been there. You're in there with a bunch of Korean War veterans. I played dominoes with a bunch of men that were World War I veterans. And
do you remember any of their names?
Yeah, Herman Arms was Randy Monk's grandpa. Yank Ross. Todd Woods was a World War I veteran, owner.
Why don't you? You keep referencing me with your hand. I don't know those people. I don't believe they were alive when I was. Were they?
No,
I don't think so.
No.
Like, cause that's World War. I mean, yeah, I didn't think so. Well, then that's pretty cool. So, who's your childhood best friend? Was it David Bates?
David Bates and Randy Monk.
I mean, I know you had other ones later, but pool hall days you were
yeah. Joe Bob and a guy named Clint Dotson, who's I think still running a bar somewhere. Big Beer Jinx and
did Joe Bob? His dad was the local barber. Did he have a barbershop when you were a kid?
Yes.
That's how Frank Phillips started. He was a barber.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. In Iowa. And then he opened several barbershops and then his father-in-law was a banker and he was like, hey, you should get into banking. And then that's how he got into where he bought their first oil leases for things that were about to tank. And so they were paying for them. That's how it all started. If you didn't know that, I just learned that when I went to Woolarock the other day.
Pretty awesome place.
Yeah, I thought it was. I'd never been there before. So I don't know who was your second grade teacher. Not to go back, but I'm just stepping.
Miss Milner.
The reason I'm stepping this process, a lot of people don't. So look, I'm just giving you guys background. My whole childhood, my entire childhood, I'll just be in town. My name's Junior, or just because it's a smaller town. If they either hear my first name only, or somebody will actually say Junior, they'll be like, "You Loyd Dale's boy." That's what they always say. And then everybody always has a story, and it usually involves you throwing rocks at people or whatever it is. So, who's your or?
Well, I say that I had a first grade. I flunked the first year of first grade. I don't even count that one.
Yeah. So you did go to kindergarten.
Yeah, pretty much I did by myself.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So Dad actually went to kindergarten. I did that too. In first grade, were they given S's, or do they give letter grades?
You got an S in music for satisfactory.
Well,
the rest of it was letter grades.
Really?
Yes.
So even though I was born in 79, I was a part of the first group of people, or roughly that era, where they just gave us S's. Like they couldn't give us letter grades because they'd hurt our feelings. Is that?
Well, the grades they gave me hurt my feelings. I'm telling you.
Well, just once.
Yeah, one time.
Did you only get held back one time?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so then we went to school the same amount of years. Oh, well, that's okay deal. So who you say your second grade teacher? I'm just going to step them.
My second grade teacher was Miss Milner.
Okay, did Miss Milner give you paddlings?
No, she never did, but she was wonderful. That was Diana Stokes' grandma.
So for all the beatings you said that you got in school, Miss Milner was not one of them.
Yeah. You know how well you like Janice Fogelman?
Yeah.
That was Janice's mother.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did like her. She also, even though I still do it, she's the one who would always say, "Stop saying like." You know, and so my daughter, every other word in the sentence is like, and it drives me insane, and I tell her to stop doing it. And I basically got it from her. So where do you say all the paddlings came in? At what grade? When were you really? Because you said if you're going down the pool hall at 6, you should already been in trouble in first grade, second grade.
I don't remember getting paddlings in the first grade, but when Miss Speaks had me, I remember when she first started out, it was like her first year teaching. She had an arm about this big around. And at the end of the school year, she was muscled. I mean muscled.
Yeah.
She spanked me a time or two because she loved me.
Is that what she
said? Told me later that. Yeah.
Yes. Didn't I meet her? I mean.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. So, so which teacher do you feel like really was the one? I mean, I've heard these stories forever, but which teacher was the one that really turned it on there?
That I really, really, really liked was, or what?
The one that gave you the most paddlings.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Miss Mangrum or Miss Hammonds in high school. Yes. And Boyd Speaks whipped me every Friday. Every Friday. And he was my neighbor, lived across the road from me. On the next block over.
Why?
Well, in geography, you had these things called question box. And you had to have them filled out. And if they wasn't filled out, you'd get a whipping. He didn't say you had to have them filled out correctly. You'd just get a whipping. Well, about Wednesday, he would ask, "Loyd, do you have your question box ready? You know, Friday you got to turn them in." And I had every kind of, you wouldn't believe what all happened to my homework. I don't think I ever did a question box. So I got a whipping every Friday. And he enjoyed it, and he enjoys talking about it to this day. And
was it in front of the class?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What are they going to do? They just binge over and get it on.
Huh. What? I don't. Well, I don't. Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah. So what about the JT Rowland? Like
JT Rowland on my very first day in math, and he was an excellent math teacher. He told me, he said, "Phillips, we're not going to have any problems in my class, are we? Because, dude, you told me that I can bust your," and he said it, anytime I wanted to, when I wanted to. So I didn't have any problems.
Do you feel like, honestly, for your age group, do you feel like you got the most paddlings of everybody?
Oh, yeah.
And
I probably still hold the record. Yes.
Well, I just think that's pretty funny. See, I didn't get paddlings, but then again, they didn't. Well, I know I did, but I didn't. They didn't do it like they did when you were a kid. Like it was a production. If you got a paddling when I was in school, it was a production.
Oh, you got 5 licks regardless of who give them to you.
Well, yeah, but they would just, you'd be like, go to the principal's office, be down there, wait for 10 minutes. He comes and talks to you, and then, whatever that you get paddling. I guess in your day, this did it in the classroom?
Yes.
That's how Joe Bob did it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's back when
That's how you're supposed to do it.
When I was in ag. Well, he would do it in his office, but his office was all glass. It was glass doors, like glass windows.
Yeah.
Not just a tiny window. The whole office was windows. And so if you got in trouble in ag, he just walked into the office. You could see the whole production. And when they'd make those loud pops, it'd just be silence. And what's so weird is that even though I don't, like in my heart, as far as being a kid, I don't know if it's not like I'm hardcore opposed to that happening. Like I'm not, to be honest, but it's been so long since it's happened. It seems really weird that ever happened, because it doesn't happen anymore. Not that I know of.
Oh no, they'd take.
But I'm just saying, like it's for something that seemed so normal when I was a kid. Now that's not even a thing. But does it really help?
Yeah, it helped them.
Oh, I guarantee
they would have had little arms.
Look, I guarantee it helps some kids, because I know there's some kids that fear it. So it probably helps for the masses, but then there's kids like like you who are like, well,
I mean, there was teachers in the high school and junior high, you didn't want them to whip you every day, but an occasional whipping made them feel better and made me feel better.
It did.
Or made me mine for a while.
We don't have to go through your whole childhood. There was just teachers, and most of them you've just said, but who gave you all the paddlings. But what about this rock throwing thing? What was that all about? I've heard it. I've heard all these 100 times, but
okay.
Not even every story I heard. I've either asked you and you told me, but none of them actually came from you. These are other people saying, your dad used to do this. And
it's kind of was with Gary Arnold and Junior Butler at different times, because we lived by the high school, and I would go out there during lunch hour, and Gary would come down and sit and smoke and drink a pop under our cedar tree outside the fence.
How old was Gary?
He was probably 16, 17 years old.
Do you feel like if vaping was a thing back then, he'd have been vaping?
Oh, no.
Just straight to the reds?
Yeah, they wouldn't vape.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Junior Butler, they would pay me to
vaping's for sissies. I did the hard stuff.
They would either pay me to throw rocks at or take my belt off and whip the girls when they went by. And then sometimes they would give me a cigarette and let me smoke it, and then yell at my mom, "Out to me!" And then I'd get a whipping for that, and they'd go off laughing.
Have you ever seen? It was like 10 or 15 years ago. It was a kid in one of those Asian countries. That kid was probably 3 foot tall, and he weighed about 130 pounds. And was smoking cigarettes. Remember that kid? Is that what you looked like back then?
No.
I don't. Is that kid? I mean, I haven't looked. Leighton, is that kid still alive? Oh, we got research going on this. There's no, I mean, that was like 15 years ago. And if you don't remember, you just look it up online. The kid was probably 4 or 5 years old and not very tall and real portly. He was a real portly fella and just burning through cigarettes. It was on TV. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you graduated, you were older than everybody?
Well, not everybody, because there was some that started out with me and graduated when I did that.
Oh, so there were.
Yeah, so they was held back. Nobody failed. You were held back.
How many people were in kindergarten with you?
I don't know. Probably 30 in our class or something like that.
No, in kindergarten.
Oh, 0. I don't know. I think there was about 12 that was held back.
Is that a thing? They don't even do that anymore, do they?
No.
Not like that.
No.
Well, it was different. You either pass or you don't, I guess.
I can remember one parent standing at the door that first year asking my teacher what kind of grades I made for the 6 weeks. Now, can you imagine that happened today? Some parent and the teacher just blurts it out with, she just goes through what my report card said. because she was happy because her son beat me.
Who was it?
Yeah, it wouldn't take much
Do you
to
know
beat
who
me.
it was?
Yeah, I don't want to say.
Okay.
He's deceased.
Well, it's like the parent who said it. Well, so now you grew up. I'm just asking. I've never actually asked this. This is a question I've never asked you before. Like you grew up, you were 10. Papa was 10 years removed, 15 from, being home from World War II. When you were born.
9 years.
9 years.
He did an occupation of Japan after the war too. So for a few months.
So, just because, was he strict? I guess that's where I'm going with that. Was he strict?
Yes.
Was he?
Yeah, he was strict in his own way because he only gave me, I can remember, one whipping. I'm sure he gave me more, but I didn't want any more.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he said none before. I asked him.
Yeah,
that.
he said none, but I remember one very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they.
Do you remember what you did?
Yes, I did. We had some next door neighbors.
Just side note, not to cut them off, but I keep telling all these whipping stories. But listen, what you guys, I'm just telling you. What you don't know is, I have lived years in this town, and everybody's like, "Oh, your dad did this. Your dad did this," and then Dad always said, "Oh, I got whipped all the time." And your mom, my grandma, your mom, she's like, that was her threat to me every time I ever walked in the door. Like, you're gonna get a whipping.
I lived
a lot of whippings around there.
3 blocks. I lived 3 blocks basically from the pool hall, and there was trees on both sides of the road, but there wasn't one limb that you could reach because they'd all been tore off and used on me.
Well, probably wasn't the smartest thing to say, but one time Grandma, I don't remember what I did, but I think I was probably her least favorite grandkid, for just being real here. And she got mad at me and she said, "Go get a switch."
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, "Are you going to whip me with it?" And she's like, "Yes." And I said, "Well, you better go get it yourself." And she did. And she came back and hit me with it a few times. Yeah. But if I was already going to get a whipping, I wasn't cutting it. Well, I guess for you were like, "Oh, well, Dad'll get me worse if I don't go get it." I took that. I didn't even think about that. I was too little, but yeah, that happened. Anyway, so what were you saying? I said, was he strict? And you were about to tell me the story. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, yeah. Well, what we were doing was that we had a next door neighbor that couldn't speak and couldn't hear, and for their doorbell was a light. You hit the doorbell, the light flash on and off.
How old were you during this?
I was probably about 10. Tom was about 12, and Doyle was about 13, 14, something like that. Anyway, what we would do, this was our Tom, was a banker's son who's no longer with us, Tom Gibson, and a great friend of mine. He got us, we learned this from Tom. We can blame everything bad that Doyle and I did together, we blamed on Tom. But we'd push the doorbell, and then we would jump over the fence and hide under the boat where Dad's carport is now. And then they would come out, and they would be, because they couldn't speak, they could make sounds, and you'd hear both of them out there, and they're looking, and they didn't see anybody. Now, this went on most of the summer that year, about every night. Mm-hmm. Tom would come down just to go do that with us, and then one day, my dad worked at McDonnell Douglas. He came home at 5 o'clock, and lo and behold, at the same time he's getting out of his car, my next door neighbor, Claude, walked over with a note. Dad read that note, and Dad wrote back on there, "I'll take care of it," because I got to see the note later, and he did.
Was it a real lengthy note? Had he been writing this note for about a month?
No. What happened was that last night before he met Dad at the gate, he saw us hiding under the boat. So I don't know if he saw one of them. Probably it could have been any one of us three that was late jumping over the fence and getting under the boat. Mm-hmm. But he walked out there and looked around like he didn't see anything, which he would do that every time, but not see anything. Yeah, it wasn't good at all.
He'd probably had enough of it.
Yeah, he whipped Doyle first, and I thought he won't whip me that way. I'm 4 years younger. Yeah, he did, just the same number. And he said if I could get that Gibson boy, he'd be getting one too.
Well, did he ever get the Gibson boy?
No, they'd always say that, but Tom would always stay gone until the heat was off. And
yeah. Well, so after you went to college, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you go to?
NEO and NSU.
Fine city. What you went to NEO? Where's that at?
Miami, Oklahoma.
Do people in Miami call it Miami?
Don't even remember. Those 2 years were pretty much a blur anyway.
Yeah, but you played pool.
Yeah, we did play pool. Randy and I, he was my roommate first year, and we acquired a guy named Boog. And then the second year it was James Rowbottom.
So anyway, so you told me you'd go to dance halls.
Well, yeah, we would go to usually it was Chelsea. We went there every Saturday night.
Population currently about 1,000 people.
Yeah, it's probably about the same back then too.
And you would go to dance halls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My God. What kind of fine dancing were you doing?
Country. Cowboy dancing.
Well, I don't.
Swing dancing.
What is cowboy dancing?
Swing dancing.
Did they do two-step back then?
No, they probably did. We just did whatever we could do.
What? So no particular. Okay, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what. I spent most of my youth, not most of my youth, but if I had to say, went to. It was the most vivid memory. If you're like, hey, did you ever go to this thing? I was like, yeah, we'd go to the Midnight Rodeo. Like that's what we would go to. But
yeah,
I did not.
Let me tell the story about Midnight Rodeo.
I did not dance though.
Let me tell you
at all.
He had a roommate, and he would keep us informed of where Loyd was doing, or whether he was or wasn't going to class, or any of this stuff. And he had two friends up there, Jet and Cord McCoy. And they were always trying to get him to be a cowboy and wear boots and a hat. And I talked to him one day. We were kind of surprised, and Loyd wasn't around or anywhere. I don't know. Granny and I think we're going out to Wyoming or not Wyoming, Colorado or whatever to go. Anyway, we asked them, "Where's Loyd?" And they said he's at the Midnight Rodeo. And this come from one of the. I think the guy that lived at Watonga or whatever. We met the big guy.
That was JC Cowboys, is what that one was.
Anyway, yeah. But I thought, boy, he's going to be a bull rider. These guys are really good. Until they told me, no, it's a bar and a club and a dance place.
That's So you went to school with your friends. They went with you there.
Yes, Billy Cox was a good friend growing up too. But yeah, Joe Bob, I, and Billy, and Randy.
How old were you then?
18 years old.
So, I mean, I know you went to the military, but after that, how old were you when you got out of the military? When did I come around? That's where I'm going with this. When did I get here?
I think you got here about 1979.
I mean, I know.
We got married in 78. You came along in 79.
I know when I got here. You got married in 78?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well. So...
you were 10 months and 20 days after we got married.
Were you hoping?
You showed up.
Were you hoping for a boy?
We were just hoping for anything.
Yeah. Well, then you got me. I'm sure.
I tell you what, people don't know this story. Let me tell the story about your birth. When Loyd was, I'm getting my hands down, but when Loyd was born, I'd been to church I was a Christian then, and
Are you not now?
Well, I still am, but that's right after I got saved. I came home from Wednesday night. Carmen didn't go because she didn't feel very well. And when I came in the door, she asked me to get something that was right in front of her. And I said, well, right there, get it. She couldn't see. And I realized she was about twice her size, and it happened just in a matter of an hour or so. Her body had just ballooned, and the pastor I called, and I was driving him. I didn't know what to do. I would just, anyway, we take her to Claremore because that's where her doctor was. And while we're in there, another doctor come by because they didn't know what to do. Her blood pressure was through. She had a hypertensive pregnancy and preeclamptic. And one doctor come by and looked. He punched her skin, and it just stayed in like pushed her finger in, and it just was a finger indentation. And he conferred with the other doctor, and then he said, we're going to transfer to Tulsa. We need to get her to a hospital.
So the other doctor concurred?
Yeah. He just told the other doctor, you need to get this lady out of here and get her to where they can treat her. And they basically said that the baby probably won't make it because of the blood pressure problem, and your wife is very, very sick. So we got there. They spent time trying to get her blood pressure down so they could do a C-section. And then right after you was born, you were perfectly healthy and everything. I'm sitting in the waiting room with my sister-in-law, and I'd already taken you in and cleaned you up. I got to carry you in there and, all this stuff.
Which sister-in-law?
Karen.
Did her hair look the same then?
Yeah, same hairstyle. and I took you in there, and I came back, and because I was up all night, and I was completely exhausted. And about this time, they called code blue, and the doors just bang open. And Karen said, "I think that's Carmel in that gurney." And it was. And she was massively hemorrhaging. They couldn't get her clot. Everything was wrong. She was in a coma for about 3 or 4 days, and a lot of prayers from everybody.
Yeah. And then I was born.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, of course, I've never had that happen, so probably a little scary thing, huh?
Yeah, it was scary.
Well, because of the way that happened and it got scary, does that mean that you guys let me get away with a bunch of stuff? Exactly. Another thing about that, there was a doctor that after he would work, his name was Dr. Migliaccio, and I don't know where he's from, but he would sit with her at night for the first 2 or 3 nights beside her bed. And, of course, they have the heart cath in to make sure everything they're given, is going to do something. And they had not like 4 units of blood just constantly dripping, running blood in. I was already out at this point, right?
Yeah, you're already out. You're done fine. And it was pretty bad. But
were you able to hold me then?
Yes, I could go in there and hold you.
But I just had to stay in the room.
Yeah, well, you wasn't in the room. Well, no, you was in a incubator, whatever the thing is.
Well, these days are like express. Like you just go in and then they come out and you're out the next morning. Well, I mean, obviously she had some problems, but they're just like, all right, well, good luck.
Yeah. No, they had you in a incubator type thing for 2 or 3 days, but
which I always find weird. I'll just ask you. I'll get to this part, but how long until she was?
Once she come around and started clotting, it was like, okay, about like it is today. Okay, she's fine. One more night in the room or a couple of nights in the room. And
so here's what I remember. Here's what I remember about my kids. Because I still it's not like I was trying to be lazy, but Avery comes out. They're in the room, but then the nurse will say, "Hey, do you want us to keep them overnight?" Because she would cry or whatever. Like, yes, yeah, do that. So like she was in there, but they would take care of her. And so maybe for like a day, it was only the day, right? She slept the first night, and then where it got weird was they will my wife to the door, and I pull the car around, and they put the kids in the back seat, and then when they shut that door, it's just silence. It's you and her and a baby. And I'm like, well, what do we do now? Like that was the first odd, like right when they closed the door and it was silence, just us and the baby. And I thought, this feels weird. Because now you have a tiny human that you got to take care of, and you don't. It's weird how it works out, because I just thought at the time, I'm like, I don't know. Do I even have the money to take care of these kids? Like, I don't know, but then you just do. You know, you just figure it out. I think that's everybody's fear when they first have kids, but then you just do. I mean, we have 2 kids, and I'm fine with it. But if we had 5 total kids, it'd work just the same. You know, but it's just weird how it works out. So, was that a thought for you? Like, do you remember the first odd thought where you're like, oh well, what do we do now?
No, I had a lot of people. When you was in there, of all the people that, Robbie and Linda Foreman had asked, she said, if you need any help, if you need me to watch your baby until Karma can come home or whatever, I thought that was pretty nice.
Yeah. She still randomly comments on Facebook posts. Usually it's something mouthy to me, but she still comments.
Yeah, Rob and Linda offered to.
Well, that's were you a firefighter then?
No.
Wait, how? I don't know. I haven't done the math. How old were you when I was born?
Hello.
24.
23. 23.
Yeah. So
23.
When did you join the fire department?
What did I do in the fire department?
Yeah.
Run fires and.
No. When? How old were you?
I got on there in 83.
83.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you did.
82,
You worked for the funeral home before.
82,
you worked for the funeral home before that, though, right?
Yes, I was a embalmer. I served apprenticeship in embalming and funeral director. And back then we had the ambulance, and we run the ambulance out of the funeral home.
The ambulance service was run out of the funeral home?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's convenient. That seems like that's a monopoly. Is that a thing that you can... They don't do that anymore.
Hey, we had a 65 Ford station wagon.
Listen, I want you to tell me, but the funny thought about that, about the ambulance being in the funeral home is like, back then, I'm not saying it happened. I'm just saying, like, hey, man, these funerals are $5,000 a pop. Drive slower. If he doesn't make it, we're going to haul him back. Is that how that went back then? No, you probably didn't.
I could.
I'm sure it didn't go that way.
Well, it's about that bad for my first accident call. I think I ran where it's multiple units from 2 different towns. They drove up on my back door where I couldn't get my cot out. They picked up the dead and we're gone.
Really?
Yes.
But okay,
that actually happened. So
well, okay, but even then, though, so was it the same? Other funeral homes that had the ambulance service also?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. In Oklahoma, the rural funeral homes operated ambulance service. They didn't go out until, I don't know. We were all ambulance drivers. You put them in the ambulance. You drove as fast as you could. You did try to control bleeding at the scene, but it's not like it was today where you have whatever. I'd get in the back if it's bad because I didn't have a helper most of the time. You're by yourself. I ran a call one time down by Spring Creek where a pickup broadsided another pickup full of kids, and I took 11 injured kids in one ambulance at the same time.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Because it would have taken an hour.
So let me ask you. So did you have training, like CPR training?
Absolutely nothing. What
was that a thing back then?
Well, I'm sure other places did, but I mean, if you watched Marcus Welby back then, or Mother Jugs and Speed or something like that, but no, I got the training that I got from Floyd, who had been an ambulance driver in Oklahoma City and worked for a funeral home up there, but he didn't have any certifications or anything. It was after. Was
it needed then? Like back then, did they have to have it back then?
No, you didn't have to have it back then.
So it was just like good luck. Like good luck.
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple of people in town. George Hooker or Charlie Hooker would make a lot of runs as a driver, and sometimes he worked back there if it was something where it just required oxygen or whatever, something like that. He'd ride back there, and then I'd drive. But
do you think you guys drove faster back then?
I know we drove faster.
Like
oh yeah.
Like right now, if I see I don't know, if I see an ambulance on the highway and they're behind me, if they're not catching me, then I just don't pull. I mean, I'm not talking about right behind me. I mean, if I can see in my rear view mirror back there, I don't get over. And most of the time, if I'm doing 5 over the speed limit, I don't even feel like they even catch me.
I think most of the time we run well over 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, they shut that down. Did you ever have a wreck in an ambulance?
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah, I've had a few.
How did you ever wreck in an ambulance?
Which time?
I don't know.
I got T-boned in Tulsa. Guy runs stop sign. I have my lights and siren on, and 2 lanes of traffic is pulled over. He jumps over the meridian. I don't know where he came from. He's going to pass everybody. He's just flying. I think he was going too fast to start with and couldn't even stop, couldn't even slow down. So he just was going to go across and hit me right in my driver's side door. And the lady that I was taking to St. Francis, I had picked her up out of a car wreck.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Was she fine?
Well, her jaws were broke, but they were probably broke previously. But she absolutely was fine. She bought us a rocking chair for you when you was born.
Is that where that rocking chair came? Wait, How long did you have that rocking chair? Because if that's the one, then I remember the one.
Yeah, you had it.
The wicker back or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, so the double wrecker is the one who.
And then she paid for a big wedding picture. She paid for that. That was after the wreck.
Oh. So that was the first one. What was the best ambulance wreck you had?
My boss, who had come from Oklahoma City, who had driven in all kinds of weather, he was going to take the drive to 2 different times. He was going to drive on the snow and ice. We didn't get hurt, and we didn't really damage that, but we did slide off and kind of bank into stuff. He lost control of it. One of them was down by where Papa Bill lived. You go around the curves. Was
this on the way to a call?
Yeah, to a call. The curves would be shady, but everything else would be melted off. And I'd say, hey, Floyd, you might want to slow down. There was ice here earlier, and we come around that curve and off and down and back up and back through the timber and back on the road. And the other time we were just going from Locust Grove to Telequah, and we couldn't see the road. Was one thing. That was probably the biggest problem. We're driving along, and all of a sudden we're down in a ditch about where Quaney's is. Yeah, where Quaney's is. That's what I count those accidents because Floyd counted everything I did.
So, and then there's an ambulance story, and I'll have you tell it because I don't know it. Oh, well, I know it, but I don't know it in its entirety. But here's another story because you're like your whole life people are going to tell me stories, and they're like, your dad, there was an escaped convict, and
that was I had that article for a long time. I was coming back from a call, coming back from a call, and right in front of me, a car flies around in front of me, and he had a wreck. He almost hit a couple, family, head on, and he went off in the embankment and wrecked in the ditch. And then next thing I know, I see this person running from that wreck, and it happened right in front of me. So I just shut the ambulance down, and I take off behind him because this guy's going to hurt. I mean, the fact he didn't hit the car, but he totaled out his. And so as I'm taking off behind him, I called it happened in front of Dinah Stokes' house, and I asked Miss Hannah, I said, call the highway patrol. What I didn't know was they were chasing him. He was an escaped convict from Arkansas. And so he's running out across the field, and I'm running, and I just yelled, stop or I'll shoot. And he just froze, and I said, lay down. He laid down, and I stood there. Highway patrol pulls up, and they come out there, and they said, when they got him up and handcuffed him, because he was still there till Holloway walks up and puts the cuffs on him, and then he had stolen the prison van or the prison pickup and fled, and they had been chasing him in Arkansas. And anyway, when they got him up, I always remember what he said. He just looked at me and said, a kid. I can't believe a kid.
Was
Yeah.
well. What about the one where you're in the ambulance? You pulled up to a barn and told them it was surrounded.
That happened on a murder investigation, or murder. We had gone to a scene. I don't want to mention any names or anything, but we had gone to this murder, and later, as part of my criminal justice class, I sat in on the class that's going to be testifying if I would have been called. But we go there, and the person had been shot, and he's laying there dead, and they're because there was all kinds of, I don't know where other law enforcement agents come in from, but they were there from Cherokee County, OSBI. I don't know, there was some OSBI agents there. But as we were there and we're listening to what they were saying, who it was and what they were driving and everything, I just told my I was standing by the highway patrol, and I said, I just saw that vehicle. We just passed it coming down here. He said, you're kidding. I said, no. I said, it pulled into a house. He said, let's go get them. Okay. So he went and told somebody. He said he knows where the vehicle, the car was, whatever. And we go there, and the person, when we pull up, he said, here's what we do. I'm going to go around toward the front. We pulled up to the side of the house where they can't be seen, He said, I'll go around to the front. I'll knock on the door, and I'll be careful and all this. He said, you get on the PA and ask him to come out. Ask him to come out. Okay. Well, whenever I do that, he goes around. The guy that had shot her, he opens up the window and he's looking straight at me. Yeah, but he came on out. He ended up at self-defense. But he had to go to trial, which sometimes you wonder why. It was self-defense.
I don't know. Maybe he just got nervous. Well, so how did you like that career?
If they would have had insurance and retirement driving an ambulance, I'd been driving it. We ended up going to EMT class, and I worked with a guy named Bill Grass. We had the best time, regardless of how bad the situation was. Bill could have you in stitches after the situation. He knew how to decompress all the feelings, because all of our things that we ran to was people we knew and grew up with.
I never really asked. I mean, I know the two, but there's Floyd and there's Bill. But you worked with Bill too. Did you work at Floyd's with Bill?
Well, Floyd owned one in Choteau, one in Salina, one in Pryor, and Locust. And Bill and I were in Locust, but we'd go wherever they needed us. So it's pretty much Bill and I. Floyd would go when Bill was on his days off, and it'd be Bill and Floyd on my days off, Floyd and I if Bill was on his days off. So
you liked, well, I know you love Floyd too, but you love Bill?
Oh, he was so funny. I wished I could have recorded everything that we did, or you would hear him in the prep room talking. I think it would be, they'd call me and say, well, hey, we got a body. We need for you to go down and embalm it. And he would be in there talking. So I'm thinking it's Floyd and Bill talking to each other. Bill's talking to the body. And I stand at the door listening, but I don't hear Floyd talking. And I'm waiting, and I'm thinking, why'd they call me? Floyd's in there. It'd just be Bill and somebody from Locust that we both knew. He'd be talking to them like they were still alive, and he'd be hashing out old memories that he could remember about them.
All I know is that it's the first time at a funeral that they filled the high school gym. I remember that for Bill.
Yeah. So
he was pretty well known, huh?
He was very well known. He had the chief of the Cherokee Nation, Wilma Man Killer, and all kinds of dignitaries from the Cherokee tribe.
Yeah. Well, that's there were a lot of people there. That's what I remember. Well, so how old was I when well, I lost that thought.
When Bill passed away, or what?
Yeah, I just remember there were a whole lot of people there.
Well, Sean Bates would be dropped off at the funeral home when he was 2 years old to sit with his Pawpaw Bill while Marilyn run errands or whatever in town. So I think that's where Sean got to be a funeral director, hanging around us at the funeral home.
But Bill's a preacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Sean, I don't believe is a preacher at all, but I've heard him do a funeral himself, and I thought he was like really awesome at it, actually. Yeah. So I guess it rubbed off for him too. Speaking of that whole volunteer firefighter thing, I mean, I know you've seen some things, and I think that's probably what shaped me. You did ambulance things, you did fire department things. Before I move on, because and then you're a safety director in your life. You know, you went back to school and got your degree for that. But do you remember the call in which you were going to go try to save the house that wasn't burning that led to me getting community service?
Yes, I remember it very well. Would you like to hear the story?
Well, I mean, I've told it here, but I just didn't hear your side of it. I know I made the call for a house fire that wasn't there, but it was a prank or whatever. It wasn't a prank. Prank implies I was going to let it see through in its entirety. I was just making a prank phone call. I didn't expect her to get all carried away.
Well, back then the fire phones, we didn't all rang at the same time. And there was 20 firefighters. It rang. And they said there's a fire at Connie Lawfer's house. I'm
going to recreate this part. It goes like this. I know. This is what happens when you pick it up. Because sometimes when I was a kid, we'd pick it up just to tell you, hey, there's a thing. And it sounded like this. This is how everybody would, fire phone, fire phone, fire phone, fire phone, fire phone. And the people are already starting to talk, and you still got 13 more fire phones when they pick it up, which kind of is ridiculous that they wouldn't just pick it up and listen, because somebody's already talking and they're still yelling fire phone. Go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, that's how it was. And they said my son was playing basketball with his friend Brian, whose house was on fire, according to the phone.
And Eric Wood.
Yeah. So I go running out the door, jump in the vehicle, and they're hollering, there's no fire, there's no fire. There's no fire at Brian's house. And I just take off and I go to Brian. I'm not even paying. That's not on my mind of what you said at the time. I get down there, and Connie, Brian's mother, ran the intersections, almost got hit broadside. And
that's her fault.
And there wasn't any fire at all. So fire chief, when we get prank calls, he takes that very serious. He'll file charges if he can find out where the call originated and who it was. So
this is Robbie, the guy who earlier you said was.
So he's already contacting Randy Bales to come over to go in there and trace the call of where it originated. When I came back, because we're down at the police station, and Robbie's telling him, I'll press charges and all this. So when we came back, I found out that my son had made that prank phone call, and before he could tell the person it was a prank, she hung up and just took off hysterical, running from one side of town to the other, and nearly had a wreck herself with another vehicle. And so I go down and tell my chief, I know who made the prank call. And he said, who was it? And I said, it was Loyd. And so he said, you're kidding. I said, no. And I told him the circumstances. And he said, well, what do you want me to do? And I said, what you do to everybody else? I said, you got to do something. He's got to learn a lesson. So he got community service. He didn't get any jail time. Most of the time they would try to take him to county and file charges. But
he actually acted like I was either going to sat in jail there at Locust Grove or do community service, but I think I was like 14. So I wish I had the adult brain I had now, just to be like, you're not gonna put me in this jail. so I'm like, all right, yeah. So yeah, I washed fire trucks.
Yeah.
Not one time. I don't know, like 3 weekends maybe, something like that. Yeah.
So the other community service you ended up getting a job out of it at the swimming pool.
No, I already had a job. I was already working there.
Yeah.
I was already working there. That I've told this story twice on there, so I don't have to tell it. But I will summarize here at the end, which I believe I probably already said it. Yeah, I was already working there. I finished my very last day of community service at the pool because the pool manager called the judge, Terry McBride, and said, "Hey, Loyd is out of days. Can he work at the pool today?" And he said yes. And so she came back and she said, "All right, Terry McBride said that you can work here." I was like, "What do you want me to do?" She's like, "Just go swimming." So I'm like, "All right, thanks." Thanks, Hope. If you're out there, thanks, Hope. So, yeah, that was how that happened. But I just told that story the other day to somebody, but it's because that was the last day. I'm not a speeder anymore. I actually I'm not saying that I haven't been pulled over for speeding since I was 18. I have, but I don't purposely speed anymore. Like it's just not a thing that I do. Even if, just last week, I drove to Midland last week. I didn't speed ever. Like there's no point.
I just thought of one story which was really great. But back when I was a kid, I was at Foreman's Auto, and we didn't have a telephone or anything like that to notify the chief of police. His name was Ned Christie. He's a full-blood Cherokee. He couldn't read or write, but he was a wonderful police officer. He had a whistle. So if people come speeding through town, he just blow his whistle. People would pull over instead of just keep going on. Well, George Hooker gave me a whistle one day. And I don't know Ned's around anywhere, but we were having fun. Them workers would come in the evening, and they'd usually park down at the DX where the fire station is. Back when you was growing up, there was a DX service station there, and the guys would get in there. So they're going pretty slow before they get to the stop sign where they need to stop or whatever. And I'd blow that whistle, and they'd pull over. Well, somebody ratted me out. Well, here comes Ned Christie, and I'm a young kid. And for all I know, George Hooker may have called to rat me out because George is kind of a rat on me sometimes. But anyway, and Ned read me a riot act and going to take me to jail. Anyway, I just thought of that.
You thought George Hooker was funny?
Oh, yes, George was funny. We had a blast. The gas station was across the street, and we'd see somebody go in the gas station. I'd call the gas station and say, whoever it was, Joe Bob, the ag teacher back then at the time, my buddy my whole life. I'd call Downing Propane because he'd be in there buying gas for the ag pickup with the boys or whatever. And I'd call, and just about the time he'd get to the phone, I'd hang up. And we were doing this from Foreman's Auto.
Because you can see inside their office.
I could see all the way across from Foreman's Auto. So he'd go back, and I'd call again, and he'd run back. Well, we'd do that, and then I didn't give it up for a while. And then I would sit over at the funeral home where you could see straight across, and I'd look out the window, and I'd see the ag pickup. And he'd be over there buying, and I'd call, and Joe Kay would come out, and she'd say, "Joe Bob, somebody's on the phone, want to talk to you." And it took Joe Bob about 5 minutes to walk from the pump in there to answer the phone. And just as he'd pick it up, I'd hang up. I did that several times. And then I couldn't take it anymore because I was laughing so hard. I just quit calling him. And when he got an ag pickup after he filled up and he drove by, I'm sitting out there and I'm waving at him. He waved back.
Like, was George Hooker with you though when you were doing
Well,
it?
yeah, we started out, we'd do it from over there too. We'd run Floyd. Floyd shouldn't have died of a young man of a heart attack because I gave him a lot of exercise. We had outside bells on the funeral home. So when the phone rang for an ambulance or whatever, it'd ring the bells. Well, I'd go in there. I could go over and drink pop or whatever because I could hear the bells. But Floyd started over. He's looking for me because I'm supposed to be back there cleaning the prep room or the embalming room. And I would do this all the time. Just about time I'd see him come out the door, and you could tell he's looking around. I know who he's looking for. I'd call, the bells would go off, and he'd run back in there. To answer the phone, I'd hang up. As soon as he'd say, help, then I'd hang up. So I did that a lot. Well, oh my gosh, it was so funny. I'd do that, and then his mother lived at the funeral home too, upstairs where Floyd lived, and his mother lived there. And so she would, when we finally got more advanced or whatever, she'd answer the phone, so we didn't have to use outside bells. And Floyd would be coming, and so I'd call, and Granny would answer the phone, and he'd talk to Floyd, and I'd do that just as soon as he'd come out the door. Because he'd get about halfway, and she'd come out the door and holler, Floyd Henry, phone. And so he'd turn around and go back. Just as soon as he'd start to say hello, I'd hang up. And we would do that and laugh. And then I'd go out the back door, around through the garage, and around behind the funeral home and come walking out. Because George is telling him, oh, he's over there working. I saw him working there a while ago. And when he'd come out, I'd look around like I'm looking, trying to find Floyd. It went on a lot.
Did Floyd ever get mad at you?
He got mad at me one time and chased me out down the alley with a scalpel in his hand, swinging it.
Why?
We had had a case, and when they embalm somebody, they take everything out, put it in a trash bag basically, and do a Y-type incision. When they get ready, you put it back in there to embalm them. All you do is you pour embalming fluid in a trash bag and then sew them up. But we had the bag sitting off to the side, and we're picking the person up to clean them out. We were going to, this is right after they first get there. We were going to pick them up, put them from the gurney to the preparation table, the embalming table. And so he gets ready, and he's got the family waiting on him in the
to talk about the funeral.
Yeah, to make funeral arrangements. And so he needs help, and I'm back there, and he says, okay, get ready. We'll go 1, 2, 3, and we'll pick them up and put them over. Well, when I picked them up, I turned like this, so it dumped everything out all over him. And he has a white shirt on, brown slacks, and he's covered from his neck down almost, or from his stomach down, to his shoes in blood. He said, you, and I won't say the other part, but then he grabbed that scalpel, and I went out the door, and he was out there chasing me down the alley. If he would have caught me, I guarantee you, he'd have stuck me with that scalpel.
Did he go back in and talk to the family?
After he changed clothes, he had to go home and change, and I had to tell the family he'll be back. He's had something come up, and he'll be back. He'll be back in a few minutes.
How long did it take him to tell you that story, but smile? Like, how long did it take him before he didn't want to stick you with that scalpel?
Oh, he got over it in a few days. Because Bill and I would laugh at him every time we'd go there.
Oh, Bill worked there then?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Was Bill there that day?
No, that's his day off.
Bill thought that was funny, didn't
he? Yeah. Yeah. I quit once, but I went back.
You quit because you got mad?
He'd buy Bill new suits, matching suits. They'd want me to work the funeral. I didn't own a suit. I had one suit, and if it wasn't clean, I wasn't going to wear it. And he told me one day, you need to put a suit on. I said, you didn't buy me a suit. He said, go get a suit. I said, I don't have a suit, and I'm supposed to work the funeral. He said, go in the prep room and get one of those suits. Now, you got to realize they tie in the back. Can you imagine? He's going to pin it up in the back so it looked like a... I said, I'm not doing that. I quit.
By the way, I just learned that. I didn't know that. I had no idea.
Yeah.
The clothes people wear, they're split?
Yeah, in the back. If the funeral home furnishes it. But that's, if you don't, we struggle to get them on. But back then they have display suits and dresses. If the person needs one, they don't have one. A lot of nursing home people don't have the clothing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's furnished.
Because I used to always go visit the nursing home. Did you and mom, dad? Did you and mom, like you knew I went to the nursing home all the time?
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. Elmer and
Gerald,
yeah, wanted fishing line.
yeah. And what's funny is I was a kid, the nurses they would say, "Did you bring him fishing line?" And I would like be proud, I'm like, "Yeah," and they're like, please don't do that ever again." And I did, but I would sneak it to them. Then it's like I was sneaking contraband into the funeral home because they told me to stop giving them fishing line. To this day, I don't really remember why.
Because Gerald would tie it on one door at the far end and string it around every doorknob, all the way down, across, and all the way back.
Well, nobody ever told me why, but they were like, "Did you give him fishing line?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Never do that again." Well, he was my buddy, so I was smuggling it in there.
Yeah, he always wanted to put line on his fishing reels.
Which is funny that do you know how we became? I don't even know like how we became friends. Like he's a mentally challenged guy, and he was. Even though I was a kid, I'm only looking at it through kid eyes, so I don't know how old he was. I have no idea. I would have thought he was 50 when I was a kid. That's what
he was probably in his 50s.
Okay,
he wasn't really old.
So, but we had like those Coke
Thick
bottle
back,
glasses, and this is and I'm not making fun of him. This is exactly
hat.
it's exactly what he would say. He would go, "You got him fishing line," and I was like, "Yeah, man." It's like my dad's got a lot. Oh, but speaking, I never even thought about that aspect. Did you get mad when you just didn't have fishing line? Actually, didn't you bring it up before?
No, because if I'd stop and visit with him and go in and see Elmer and different ones that I knew that were in a nursing home, because I ran a lot of calls there, and he'd tell me, well, Gerald would tell me, "I got some fishing line now."
Yeah, and he would put it on his pole, and when it would rain, he would stand out on the curb and throw it in the
mud hole.
Yeah, I don't think he caught anything.
He had some bites, so he'd tell you he did.
Yeah, so but they never. I mean, they never kicked me out of the place, but I went there all the time. Oh, that's what I was to say. The first time, how we became friends, we were kids. Well, he was throwing walnuts at us. Walnuts are rocks. I think we had walnuts on our side of the street, so we were throwing them back. Like we were having a walnut rock fight. That's how we bonded, I think, me and Gerald. And then Elmer I just became friends with later because he would always be out there in the wheelchair. And he would have a police badge sticker on the side of his wheelchair, and he'd always be like, point at it like this.
Yeah.
He'd be like, "See that?" I'm like, yeah. He's like, "Please." Like, well, that's cool, man.
You know, some of my best friends that I was close to when I was little, my grandma was in a nursing home. And I would go down there. Those people were so lonely to have some young kid, because they don't get to see young kids. They just say, and they were so nice, but people wasn't visiting them. I mean, I remember one lady, her son was in Florida and didn't even know where his mom was until she passed away, and how he came later to find out where she was buried. It was pretty sad because he always wanted to know where his mom was. And
you say your grandma?
Yeah, my grandma, both my grandma and grandpa, Granny Bricky and Doc Bricky, my grandpa.
Where were they at? Like what nursing home? What town?
They were in nursing. When they finally got to where they needed to go, they went to the nursing home at Park Hill South, down by Turner's Laundry.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that's the one where Loffer's mom worked, where she threw the phone down, got all carried away, and drove to her pretend firehouse. That's where she was at when that happened. Yeah. Well, so you guys were cool. I mean, you guys didn't care. I was there all the time.
No. We're so much. It's bad to say. You know, you almost feel guilty of being perfectly healthy, because there's people in there. I think you even talked about it. Seeing people that look young, people in a nursing home, you know, that had disabilities.
Yeah. Well, there were some. As a matter of fact, the one guy who always knew who you were. Well, I mean, you know, Gerald may, but they didn't call you by name. Yeah. But I don't remember his name. The "You're a Duck" guy, Johnny.
Yeah,
was
Johnny.
Yeah, and he remembered you because you picked him up in a fire call.
Yeah.
At a wreck, I guess. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And so his two classic lines were,
You're duck.
Yeah, I was like, you a duck.
Yeah.
Like, you're a duck.
Yeah.
You a cucumber. That's what he would say.
Yeah.
They would either call you a duck or a cucumber. Yeah. Those were fun times when I was a kid. It's not even there anymore. It's like the building's not even there. Well, so anyway, we totally skipped this. We've been here like an hour and 15 minutes. Turns out I got a brother. We haven't even brought him up yet. I have a brother. Are we the same?
Yeah, in his own way. Scott, everybody used to think Scott was the quiet one, serious, and I thought that. I always thought you were the one that was always, wild and crazy like I was, and Scott was always, because he was quiet at home, or seemed to be, but everybody that ever got around him said, he's a nut.
Well, they'll say he's funny.
Yeah, he was funny. They said, he didn't ever shut up. He's always doing something. And I thought, Scott? I mean, like Zach with the cigarettes. Zach leaving his cigarettes at the house all the time. And Scott told me they was Zach's cigarettes. They'd be out there in the yard, and he said, no, when Zach comes over, he goes out there and smokes one or whatever. Or you'd smell it in Scott's car, and, it's always Zach. And Zach said, told me one day, I said, Zach, you left your cigarettes in there. And Scott, he said, I've never smoked. I don't smoke. I said, whose cigarettes? He said, whose do you think? Scott's.
Yeah. Well, how old was he? But he didn't do that when he was in high school.
Yeah, he did.
Did he?
Oh, yeah.
What a skank.
Yeah, I know. He's always smoking.
I told this before. All you ever said, you're like, I used to smoke grapevine. What? Why would you smoke? What is that? Why would you even smoke grapevine? I don't get like.
Hey, you could inhale them cigarettes or grapevines. They were a little strong, but they were good smoking because you'd talk to some of the old timers, the World War I veterans or whatever, and they'd talk about not smoking tobacco, just smoking grapevines when they could get them.
Yeah.
So I tried grapevines.
Oh, because you learned it at the pool hall there.
Well, Darlene taught me how to smoke.
So your sister?
Yeah, because Dad smoked. They in their rations in the war, everybody got a pack of Kent cigarettes. That's what Dad smoked after he got out, until I was probably about 7 or 8 years old. And he quit smoking.
Then he moved to Red Man.
Then he started chewing, and then I started chewing.
Here's what I remember. Two things, two thoughts from my childhood. And I know that what you were trying to do, you were trying to teach me a lesson. And I don't remember what order this happened, but this happened. I was like, I said something about skull or wanted. It was like, or I wanted a dip or whatever I said, and you gave it to me. But here's what I remember. I put it in my lip. I know what you're doing. Like, well, now, right? I know you were trying to teach me a lesson. I put it in my lip, but every time I would spit, the dip would come out, like parts of the dip. So I'm like 5 spits in, and I got almost really no dip in my lip. And then I was like, this is stupid. And that was it. It didn't even get to me because every spit, it just would come out. And I'm stupid. And to this day, I'm 42. That's the only time I've ever had dip in my lip in my life. And I was probably 7 or 8. I don't remember if this happened right before or right after. I remember being at the fire station during a fire meeting. And they're like, there's the thing. You're my dad. Like, there's no way that we can put. And there's stories that we haven't even touched, and some we don't even touch for probably obvious reasons. But there's so many funny stories of my whole life. But fire station has numerous funny stories. But this particular time, we're down there, and it's the whole fire meeting, and I'm down there with Wes and Brent, my cousin Brent. He's a year older than I am. Actually, he's 5 months older than I am. So, but we're different grades because where his birthday fell. And he wanted a dip because Brent always was like, wanted to be Wes, So he's like, Dad, let me get a chew. It was a chew, wasn't a dip. Let me get a chew. Levi Garrett's what it was. Remember it to this day. So he's like, no. He asked his dad for a chew probably 5 times, and Wes kept telling him no. But Brent kept saying, Dad, let me get a chew. So he's like, okay. Wes told him no like 5 times.
I remember that.
Yeah, and so he gave Brent this chew, and Brent's standing there like he's a man too, with all the firefighters. Now, I don't remember to this day how long he had it in. 5 minutes, 10 maybe. And would it have been that fast? 10 minutes, something like that. It was in.
Yeah, he was getting green.
Yeah, and he said, he's like, I don't feel very good. I don't feel good at all. And I just remember he threw up 100 times. Seemed like, and the. By the way, the dip session I just gave you that I did like five spits and was out. Brent did go on to chew again in his life.
Yeah.
That was just the start of it. I don't think he chewed as a child anymore. I thought that was his first go, but it made him sick. I remember that. Do you remember that?
I remember that.
We had to wash out the fire station. So how many? You got a lot of grandkids?
I've got 5 granddaughters, 1 grandson.
Yeah,
they're all beautiful, healthy, active.
And you think the one grandson's the one that's going to carry on the wildness?
Parker should fill right in.
I asked a teacher at school the other day because Scott says he's wild and you say he's wild. I've been around him. He's wild, but I don't know. Maybe I just encourage him when I'm around him. But I asked a teacher, I'm like, is he really as wild as they say? And she just smiled and she's like, oh, yes. Yes, he is. Yes. Like she was trying to tell me you can't control him.
but he has a really, really great heart. Like the other day I told you about sharing that popcorn with Granny and I. He had a whole bag there after church. I go to their church on Wednesday nights, and after church, he had a big old bag of popcorn. I mean, one big tall bags, and he was just about to get in the van with his mom and dad, and he come running over, Pawpaw. I mean, he gets excited and stammers and kind of a little bit, and he said, I want to give you something. And he gave me, now he's got this big bag of popcorn. He gave me 1 kernel of popcorn. And he said, and here's one for Granny too.
Well, so look, I mean, there's 1,000 stories that we haven't told. I mean, it's like a whole life's worth. Probably does need to be on here. And as you all know, like I don't really structure these things. It's not like I write stuff down and start talking, but anyway, this is episode 100. I figure I'll put down in here. Maybe it'd be episode 200 also. Maybe it's just like every 100. Maybe it's every 50 or 100. Maybe it's every quarter. But we'll be on here and we'll do it. Like I do appreciate you being on here. I also know that I'm fortunate to have you here for sure. I'm not. This is usually a funny show. I'm not going to get too sentimental. But my friend lost his dad the other day, so I'm just fortunate, and I'm sure he has those thoughts where he's like, man, just 5 more minutes or whatever. So, sometimes people take things for granted, and you shouldn't. And really, the only reason that I am the person I am, I mean, of course, my mom also is there, but it's because of you. Like I'm only funny. I'm only funny because I watched how you interacted with people. I watched it my whole life. I remember people, every time you'd play, it was the fire station memory, upstairs. You played dominoes or cards or whatever, and you'd be with a lot of guys around the table. And I never understood this as a kid. You would say stuff and the whole room would laugh every time you would say anything. Some stuff maybe I picked up on, but a lot of stuff I didn't, and they would still laugh. And here's what I remember, though. I remember being confused. I'm like, why are they laughing at Dad? He didn't even say anything funny. Well, I think I know what you're doing now. You know how many times I say stuff under my breath or say stuff that kids have no idea what I'm talking about, but the whole rest of the room knows what I'm talking about, but kids don't? I do it all the time. Still do it all the time. And I'm assuming that's what you're doing, because I remember people would say stuff, and I would just stare at them and be like, that's not even funny. Why are they laughing? Like, or maybe it was a story I didn't get either, Just, what do you call that? Not under the table. What do you call that, Leighton? What do you call it? Just the word. It's escaping me. Inside jokes, right? So maybe it was inside jokes I didn't get. But I learned all that from watching you. Like I learned how to make people laugh, things you say, what you do, like how you interact. The only reason I haven't got anywhere, two things. Kevin Black, his dad was a businessman. I wanted to be a businessman because he was a businessman. Like I just was like, yeah, I want to do that. But I learned all of my social cues, work in a room, for lack of a better term. I learned that from you. So I wouldn't be who I was if it wasn't for you. I never would have done stand-up comedy shows if it wasn't for you. I probably wouldn't have this podcast. So anyway, it's cool that you're on episode 100.
I'm glad you had me.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I had you.
That's right. That's right. So, anyway, thanks for being on here. It's a thing I say every show. I don't even know if you listen to this show. I have no idea. I have no idea if my dad listens to this show. But Pete Rose, put him in the Hall of Fame. Pete Rose, Hall of Fame, everybody. Let's put him in there. Love everybody. Thanks for listening. Episode 100, and we'll talk to you later.